I fly because I have to. Ever since I was a little kid, that first airplane that I saw, I knew that was something I had to do.
How do you describe the beauty of flight? Fly, like I get up there and soar. It's weird. No one can describe flying.
I started flying and I was just hooked. So it was never something that that was premeditated, it just kind of happened. Flying gave me something that I had never experienced before, and that was a level of confidence that I hadn't felt growing up. It was something that was unique. People found out that I was taking flying lessons, and they thought it was cool, and I thought it was cool, and just the whole idea of giving you the freedom to move around and go places that were inaccessible at that point by car was just something that I had never experienced before.
Well, ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I liked airplanes. And I used to look up, watch them fly over, think, I gotta do that someday. So as you're climbing out in the airplane, you're climbing away from the earth and you're getting up in the sky and you're looking down on everything and it's a great feeling. You can feel the airplane, the acceleration.
Just awesome. It's freedom, it's excitement, it's fun, it's being able to get places it's very hard to otherwise. It's just an amazing thing to be able to do.
It's been something that I've been very driven to do my whole life. And I couldn't fly, I would draw airplanes. I would try to hitch a ride or read about it. Anything I could do to get in the air or read about being in the air. It was just this sense of just having to do it.
The moment of leaving the ground is always very special, and that still is. It's just amazing when that happens. And then once in the air, the ability to move in 3 dimensions, not just left and right and back and forth, but just up and down as well. And that's just something you don't get on the ground.
Well, I've always been interested in aviation. Growing up, going to air shows and stuff like that, my dad was always into flying. I watched, as I was growing up, he got his license. And I was in Civil Air Patrol as a kid, so that you're always surrounded by aviation, when you're in Civil Air Patrol. So I got my first airplane ride was an orientation ride with them. They put you in the airplane and let you fly. That was just amazing to me. So that was probably my first real experience in aviation.
I never thought about being a pilot when I was younger. The recruiters came and they had us do some testing because I thought it would be nice to go in the military and possibly fly. Sounded like a cool thing to do, and then that's when I found out that I didn't have perfect vision, and that was it. So I thought, okay, can't ever be a pilot. When I went to junior college at the College of San Mateo, they had an outstanding aviation program, and I just happened to take a private pilot ground school just as a prerequisite, as a general ed requirement. And the instructor there was very charismatic, Bruce Walters. I will never forget that man. He was wonderful. And he asked me one time, well, why aren't you flying? And I said, well, my vision's not good enough. He goes, forget that. It's not, you don't have to have 20/20 anymore. Go start flying.
Ever since I was a little kid, I was interested in aviation. I had a flight simulator, and I was always super into that. And I never really had a true aviation experience until my 12th birthday, in which my parents got me a little fun flight with an instructor around the local area. And I got to take the controls and everything, and I was just so enamored with flight and just how everything worked, and I loved it. And it was so much better than the simulator. and I just couldn't get enough. So I knew from a very young age that this is what I wanted to do.
I've always been interested in looking at airplanes when they flew by, but never had the opportunity to fly until we moved over here. We were working, and my brother-in-law calls me and says, have you got an airport near you? I says, why? We want to come and learn to fly. Okay, so I went looking, and I found an airport only 3 miles from where we live.
The one part most people will always remember about their training, every single pilot will tell you that they remember their first solo in great detail.
It was a beautiful day in Palo Alto. The wind was nice and calm, great weather, and I was so happy because I had done maybe it was 3, 4, or 5 takeoffs and landings in the T-craft that were just perfect. I was so happy, and so my instructor, he said, pull over here, and he was unbuckling his seatbelt and getting out, and I looked at him. I wish I would have had a picture of my face, because it never really occurred to me that I was going to fly by myself. I just thought he was going to be there all the time.
And I wasn't expecting it. I had been flying for, I think, 7 hours. And I was expecting to solo a little early, but I was not expecting to solo that day. And so, cold December day, my instructor just looked at me and said, all right, I want you to go around the pattern 3 times. And I thought, you are making a big mistake.
The airplane just performs so well when you get that guy out of the other seat. Climbs better, the engine runs smoother, the radios sound better. Yeah. Maybe it's just perception, but.
So I went out there and took off, and it was just the greatest thing, just to be out there by myself doing my little takeoffs and landings. And at the end of it, he cut the back of my shirt off. I thought he was kidding at first, but I did find out that that wasn't just, that was tradition, and I still have it. He's got the name, the aircraft number, date, everything on it. So it was great.
On one sense being terrified, but on the other sense going, no, I know how to do this. I can do this. And so he hopped out, and because it was a cold day, you got great engine performance, you got great climb, and I went down that runway, and now we've got, an instructor's worth of weight out of the airplane. I was surprised how fast I popped off the runway, and I to this day remember that.
You just get this feeling of accomplishment, and I was just so proud of myself that I was able to do that. And I came back, and my family was all there, and it was a great day. It was probably the best birthday I've ever had, and no pilot will ever forget that. I definitely won't ever forget that.
Being a student pilot was really cool. Everybody around you asks you about your training, asks you about your last flight. I found that the people at the airport to be very supportive. It was really neat. All the older guys that fly around the airport, everybody wanted to take you up in their airplane and take you under their wing, so to speak.
Being a student, it was a lot of fun. It was stressful at times because I was 23 when I started, and you have to have a level of accountability learning to fly that you don't have to do. The only thing I can think of is driving a car, and it's way, way above that. So for me, a challenge was becoming very, very disciplined in the way that I looked at things.
In the early days, it was very much a fulfillment of a dream. And, now as an older pilot, it's the continuation of that. And it always brings me back to my early years and the instructors that I had. And how fun it was to be able to do something that had been my childhood dream.
Going up there and being able to do something that, you're not supposed to do, I guess, fly. It's not something that's been around forever, but a lot of people don't do it. And being able to do it yourself is kind of just one of those things that it's great. I don't know, it's amazing.
It was so much fun. It was like had been a secret door all along that had been closed, and all of a sudden somebody opened it, and I found this world of people and airplanes and experiences that I didn't know existed. So it was so much fun that that was a very good counterpart to the level of intensity that I found that I needed to adapt to.
It's all the different milestones that you go through, from your solo to your first cross country to your night flying. All that stuff really builds the excitement until you get your license and your check ride, and then you take your first person flying, and it's hard to beat that.
To me, the beauty of flight is just the process of being able to do it. I'm amazed at the human capacity of being able to sit in something like this and to be able to perfectly judge coming down and landing. I don't know, it seemed a little harder back then because you don't have all the fancy stuff that we do now. That makes it, to me, it makes it a lot safer now.
To become a licensed pilot, there's a very stringent program that you have to satisfy the requirements in terms of hours of flight and experience, and then you have to pass a test that is a practical test that shows your level of that you can perform to a certain standard, and that therefore that you're safe. So for me, I've been in aviation about 32 years now, and with the advent of computers and the progression of technology, things just in my own personal career have changed dramatically. So things like getting a weather briefing and being able to get updated briefings while you're en route as as in general aviation, not just as an airline pilot, they've gotten much, much better.
So when you talk to people who have no experience with general aviation, they seem to think two things. One, that it's very dangerous, and the other one that it requires a great deal of skill and effort to fly an airplane. And neither of those are really true. Flying a small airplane like this is no more dangerous than riding a motorcycle, and probably a lot less dangerous than doing that on 101.
And then the training has gotten much better with the advent of technology, things that I didn't have access to when I was getting my private instrument commercial rating. I can get the same quality of things that I can as an airline pilot now, so that if you have the drive to go find the material, you can learn it. And I think that has all elevated the level of safety, and you can see that in our accident records. It's just gotten better and better and better over the last 15 years for both general aviation and commercial aviation.
Throughout the years, they've passed more regulations. Pilots have to be better prepared and have more knowledge. Airplanes have gotten safer.
People freak out too much about the smallest thing. When you've got a car accident, nobody cares. If you have an accident in the plane, it'll happen in one part of the world and you'll hear about it in the other part of the world. Even if the pilots and passengers walked away, from it, people still freak out about it, and that's why I think it gets overregulated. When you get overregulation, then you get a lot of a cost associated with that. And so, like a normal piece of hardware on a plane, even though you might be able to get it in the hardware store for, I'm just making this up, for like $1, it would cost you $20 to get a certified part through aircraft hardware, even though it's the same exact thing. And so it's things like that keep it. Things like that are frustrating, and I think that's what drives the costs up.
You can't compare the beauty of flight to anything else. There's just this feeling you get when you're up there looking down on everything else that can't be matched.
You don't have the restrictions of having to go on a particular road at a particular time, and so rather than sitting in bumper to bumper traffic on Highway 80 from San Francisco driving out to Sacramento, you're above that and you're just looking down and waving at these people.
Driving and flying are completely different worlds. You can always have fun driving, but it's way different. It's very one-dimensional. Of course, you can go on road trips and have a lot of fun with your friends, but when you take it to flying, it's a whole different world. And if you haven't experienced it for yourself, there's nothing else like it. And if you have experienced it, you know there's no going back. With driving, there's a lot of limitations, and with aviation, you don't have that. You can basically go as fast as you want, go wherever you want, and get there in a reasonable amount of time.
It's a lot different. Airline travel, you sit in a seat. It's kind of like going for a ride in the bus. The nice thing you can do is look out the window somewhat, but you're at such high altitudes you can't see a lot. But if you fly over parts of the western United States, you know, if it's a clear day, you see a lot of the land.
When a lot of people think of flying, they think of airline travel. They think of waiting in line, going through security, and being packed into a sardine can to go wherever they need to go. And while that may not be the most glamorous part of aviation, there's so much more to it than that. And so much of it is hidden within the world of general aviation, and people just don't know about it until they're a part of it. And it's one of the greatest things they can experience. I just get this feeling when I'm up there, looking down on everything else, that I don't have to worry about anything. I'm stress-free. I'm having a good time. And it's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
When I think about going flying in a little airplane as compared to just taking an airliner to go on vacation, there's a whole part of the flight itself where you fly at most of the time you fly at a lower altitude, you're closer to the ground, you've got a better visual, so you have this whole perspective in the air looking down at things that you don't have in an airliner. So it's a much richer experience just visually and orally, from hearing the sound of the engine and the sound of the wind, and then being able to, like, for example, we're in Northern California right now, and in the San Francisco Bay Area, I think that has some of the most beautiful topography, mountains, water, you name it, it's just right there out in front of you, and it's just stunningly beautiful. places where you wouldn't think that they're that intriguing to go to, they are. They're really fun to go find that $100 hamburger and just go to Half Moon Bay for lunch. Park your airplane, walk over to the great restaurant, have some terrific clam chowder at Ida's, and then be home in a couple hours. Can't beat it. And then there's all of these really cool general aviation airports that you can't fly into in a big airplane that you can go to in a little airplane.
My wife and I are able to go to places that are a lot further away by car than they are by plane, and so we can like head to Gold Country like Colombia and be there in, I don't know, an hour, maybe a little bit more, and if we were to drive, that would be 4 hours, and if you're only doing that in a day, you've already taken up 8 hours in the car. So we can get there in an hour, we can roam around the whole town, we can eat, and easily be back before dark. And, it's a very nice date. And so it puts things in reach that normally wouldn't be, or that you normally wouldn't do by car.
Going out and camping, a lot of people are surprised that you can go across country camping in an airplane. You throw your sleeping bag, you throw a tent in the plane, and you just take off. And you can literally camp all across the United States at different airports and see the whole United States from the air. It's a breathtaking sight as you cross the mountains, or you drop down into the valleys, or you're cruising through right over the top of the river. Those are ways you can see the world that nobody else can see. Very few people see the world from above like that. You experience the sounds, the smells, the sunsets. It's breathtaking.
No clue what life would bring us, we never did what we've been told. We were pirates, astronauts, and superheroes, living our dreams, dancing on rainbows, feeling each color, riding wild dragons, so some stories to tell. Stuck in motion, ran against the wall, no way to turn back the stories we have told. Seems so far away on a distant planet, buried under tons of sand. The things we will do to dream the way we used to years ago, and to tell the stories again. So let's fly on those dragons, leave all of this mess behind, leave all our problems back on the ground. So let's lose ourselves just for a moment, just for tonight, and see how beautiful life can be. Nobody knows how long we've got, so don't waste time and let's start making the best out of us. And fly away. No more gray skies from today, and we're dancing in sky, and steering straight towards the horizon. Yeah, we're dancing
places that are off the beaten path, and I flew up the north coast of California and went all the way up to this place called Shelter Cove, and it was awesome. It's great that these opportunities to go to new places open up to you once you have a new form of transportation, a new form of fun. It's great. There's a lot more personal comfort. There's more choices as to where you can go. You don't have to wait around. You're the captain of your own flight. I feel like general aviation is more about the journey than the destination. It seems cliche to say that, but that's really how it is. You can't go flying into these small airports and these little tight-knit communities with, large aircraft. You can't do that with airline travel. And there's so many more places that you can go, and there's so many more things you can find. And you can keep doing that in aviation. It never gets old.
Just as a hobby, wanting to get into it, and I just once you get into aviation, you can't get out. There is no getting out. So for me, I just kept getting further and further in, and pretty soon it was my career as well. So
I heard one time a figure that for every flying job that there was in aviation, there was 10 other jobs that were a support to actually getting an airplane off the ground. So there's also aircraft dispatchers. They're the ones that look at all the weather, put together our flight plans, cargo loaders, caterers, all the food industry, and then there's also all of the jobs just working at the airport, not even for an airline.
There's so much more outside of just flying an airplane. And if you do want to fly, you don't have to be stuck doing one thing. You could fly corporate, you could fly military, you can fly tours in helicopters. There's so many different ways you can go. So the opportunities with aviation really are endless. Endless freedom, endless opportunities. It's a great place to be.
They don't go to work. When they're off, when they're done getting paid for what they do, they're still at the airport. They're still, maybe they're flying their plane instead of the plane they're hired to fly. But you'll find very few pilots that feel like they're going to work when they fly.
I started flying when I was 15, soloed when I was 16, and when I was 17 I got my license. So I was a junior in high school with a private pilot license, and I think that's pretty cool to be able to do that. The aviation community is very accepting to anyone. If they see that you have the drive to learn how to fly and you want to make a career out of it, they'll help you in any way they can.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions with aviation is that it's a rich person's sport, or it's something that you have to be very wealthy to do. And it just couldn't be more inaccurate. We find here that we have people from all walks of life that come to fly. A lot of our product offering is such. We have airplanes that are expensive, and we have one of the least expensive airplanes that you can find. And it's important that people feel like they have access to flying. It doesn't take a lot of money to get into it, and it definitely doesn't take a lot of money to get your license if you do it the right way. And a lot of it is driven based on the student, how involved they are, how prepared they are for each flight. But whether you do it an hour a week or you do it 5 hours a week, anybody can get it done on a relatively tight budget if they're committed to it. We value tech jobs, or we value all these other career paths, but we kind of overlook aviation a little bit, or it's viewed as unobtainable. And so I think the best thing we can do is, one, get the message out that aviation is a viable career. Aviation is a great career, and it's also something that people from all walks of life can get access to.
If you look at any airport, it's generally made up of very small planes. And a lot of these planes, like ours, are owned by a partnership. I don't fly every day, and so it makes sense to be in a partnership, so that the plane can get used and you can get into it for, in our case, we were able to get into it for less than a used car. And so it's, if it's something that you're not using for work and relying on, and it's something that's more of a hobby, it can be very affordable, and it's not the domain of the ultra rich.
I think that a lot of people, like I said before, have the stereotypes of that they can't fly because they're, certain, either money-wise, or just because they think that pilots have to be a certain person or certain looks or whatever. But I guess just telling people that try it out, and to, continuing to show the younger generation that it's possible to do it by yourself. I do it by myself. I, fund myself, and it's a great outcome.
I got what's considered a late start. So if you're watching this and you're 28, 29, 30, no, it's not too late to start.
I have a lot of people who come to me and will say, well, what did it take? And will think that it's, one of these impossible things. And, it's going to take so much money, it's going to take so much time. And I tell them all the same thing. You just start. Don't look at the whole huge picture. Just get into an airplane, take an initial flight, see if you like it, go to the point of soloing.
There's really no excuse not to. You just have to get out there and do it. I promise you, it's worth it.